Okay, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know there are people still coming in, but I want to be respectful of your time, and we have so much that we're doing together today. Welcome to Sharsheret's annual virtual Tashlich program. I'm Melissa Rosen, Sharsheret's Director of Training and Education, and I am so excited you are with us today for this special program. This is actually our 4th annual virtual Tashlich and the official kickoff of 2025's Sharsheret Summit. I'm excited to tell you more about the summit toward the end of the program. But I do want to start by thanking the sponsors of today's program and the annual Sharsheret Summit: Merck, AstraZeneca, Novartis, Pfizer, Lilly, Daiichi Sankyo, City of Hope, AZI, GSK, and the Cooperative Agreement 240061 of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And thank you to all of our National Summit partners who you saw on the slides as you entered. You were muted as you entered today's program. Please stay on mute so we can clearly hear our presenters. And as always, this program is being recorded, but no faces or names will show on that recording other than those of the presenters. But if you wish to turn off your video for privacy now, the option to do so is on the bottom left of your screen and being placed directions into the chat box. You can also choose to rename yourself if you prefer to remain anonymous. You can do that by clicking 3 dots on the top right of your photo square. We also have closed captioning. To display live captions on the bottom bar, click Captions and then Show Captions. You will be notified when the recording and transcript of today's program is posted on the Sharsheret website. Please feel free to share that link with those who may be interested. As the fall Chagim, the fall holiday season has begun, and we need to acknowledge that for many of us, the high holiday season can be difficult. At this time of year, many of us make apologies, ask for forgiveness, as we hope for a new year filled with health and happiness. But I want to remind you that facing cancer, or for those of us who have faced cancer, can complicate the high holidays. First, there's the physical. Maybe you can't travel to spend the holidays with friends or family, or you don't have the energy to prepare your fall's favorite dishes, the ones that have been prepared for generations in your family. Perhaps it's difficult to stand up and sit down frequently or to spend long periods of time at synagogue. And our concerns absolutely extend beyond the practical. While facing such a difficult experience, are we expected to ask for forgiveness? How can we even think about the coming year as we are still trying to get through the current one? Even high holiday liturgy can present challenges. So for today, for just a bit of time, I'm happy we've come together for a bit of seasonal strength. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, I am excited to welcome Cantor Jenny Asher. She is a violinist, a composer, and works at Hamakom, a congregation in West Hills, California, as their cantor and music director. She was raised in California and went to England for her bachelor's and master's degrees in music. And she returned 9 years later. She began cantorial school at the Academy for Jewish Religion in California. Coincidentally, Cantor Asher met our guest speaker, Rabbi Dr. Jason Weiner, in her last year of school as a 10-month chaplaincy intern at Cedars-Sinai that she says forever changed the way she listens to people. The first song she will be singing is Lessons of the Heart. Cantor Asher, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa, for that beautiful introduction. I'm happy to be here with you today. This is a song you close your eyes to. It's gonna take time. It's gonna take time.
Wow. Wow. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah. Your voice is absolutely stunning. Thank you very much. And we're looking forward, get all those hearts, and we're looking forward to welcoming you back toward the end of the program. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm excited and honored to welcome Rabbi Dr. Jason Weiner to join us. He serves as the senior rabbi and director of the spiritual care department at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, where he is responsible for the chaplaincy team in all aspects of spiritual care. Rabbi Weiner previously served as the assistant rabbi at Young Israel of Century City. He has earned two rabbinic ordinations, as well as a doctorate in clinical bioethics from Loyola University, where he also earned a master's degree in bioethics and health policy, in addition to a master's degree in Jewish history from Yeshiva University. Rabbi Weiner is a board-certified chaplain through Neshama, the Association for Jewish Chaplains, and he sits on the association's board. He's also the rabbi of Knesset Israel Synagogue of Beverlywood in California, and the author of Jewish Guide to Practical Medical Decision Making and Guide to Observance of Jewish Law in a Hospital. Rabbi Weiner is also a longtime friend of Sharsheret and will be speaking today about resiliency in the face of cancer during the high holidays. Rabbi Weiner, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Melissa. It's really an honor to be with all of you. Always an honor to be with Sharsheret and with such resilient and incredible people as yourselves. I'm humbled and honored to be with you all, especially at this auspicious time. This is an auspicious and exciting and challenging time of year. The week between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is meant to be a time of reflection and preparation. Some people sometimes see it as a week of judgment. I mean, it's not shocking that people see it that way. I mean, it is, we do refer to the high holidays as Yemei Hadin, and it's time of there is that imagery. It's not the way I see it, and I'll try to explain. But my favorite story of a court case, divine court case that happens during the high holidays in Jewish, folklore, is the story of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, the great Hasidic master. There's a story that one time in his synagogue on Yom Kippur, everyone's praying, and oftentimes people wait for the rabbi to finish the rabbi's prayers before proceeding with everyone else's prayers, and they see the rabbi is just going on, praying and praying and praying, and people start to get, nervous. What's going on? And finally, he's like sort of snaps out of his prayers, and he says, "Everyone, I have good news for you, important news." He says, "I was just in a little meeting with God, and I said to God, I know it's there's a judgment. You're making a judgment now on the coming year. So I'm willing to make a deal with you, God, on behalf of the Jewish people," this rabbi said. He said, if you look at my congregants, there might be some people that did some small things. People might have stolen or spoke poorly about someone else. But there's no one in my congregation, there's no one that murdered anyone. There's no one that made any children orphans. There's no one that made any women widows. I have no murderers in my congregation. He says, no one did anything that bad in my synagogue. But God, you did. You've done these things in this past year. So I'll make you a deal. We will forgive your minor. If you will forgive our minor transgressions, God, we'll forgive your major transgressions. And he turns to his congregation. He says, God couldn't turn me down on that one. And so we're okay. God's going to judge us favorably. I always found that story to be so shocking. The accusation that he made against God, and how being so real and forceful. Um, I found it frankly difficult to hear that story when I first heard it, and I still do. But I find it so powerful, the sense of being willing to call out God and say, you know what, God, there's things that happen in this world that we're not okay with. It reminds me of my second favorite story of a court case in Jewish history, which was the famous story that Elie Wiesel told, that as they're leaving the concentration camps, the displaced persons camps, and after the Holocaust, a group of Holocaust survivors decided to put God on trial. And they'd appointed someone in the group to be the defense attorney defending God, someone else to be the prosecution. They created a jury, and they had a trial. Do we think God is guilty? They argued it out. They debated. Some people really defended God. Other people really, held God accountable. And they put it to the jury. They voted, and they found God guilty, this group. Then Elie Wiesel remembers that after finding God guilty, someone in the group said, "Oh no, it's getting dark. We better daven mincha before it's too late. We better say the afternoon prayers." And they all, as a group, stood up, faced, Jerusalem, and said the afternoon prayers. And he said it was such an interesting sight. This group of Jews who just found God guilty then turns to pray to God. And he said that's been the Jewish condition for thousands of years. We struggle with God, we wrestle with God, we have accusations and legitimate arguments against God, and then we turn and we pray to God. And so how do we understand that? How does this make sense? What makes sense, what to me always was meaningful about that was the sense of, Judaism is so focused on our actions. At the end of the day, the reality is we recognize that we don't understand God's ways. I remember one time I got called to the hospital like 2 a.m. Part of my job is being on call at all hours, and I get called in at 2 o'clock. We try to get out of it as chaplains. I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell on me, but if we can, we try to get out of it. So I get the call from the nurse. This family, this patient is dying, and they want to see the rabbi. I said, okay, do you think they'll still be there at 8 a.m. maybe? Can I come in a few hours? And they said, no, they're there right now. They're demanding to speak to you. And I said, okay, maybe over the phone. They said, no, they said this needs to be in person. I said, okay, I'll be there then. Okay, in that case, I'll come. So I showed up, pretty quickly after, and I get to the room. I'll never forget this. It's like 15 years ago now. And the daughter of the patient says to me, "Rabbi, we needed to talk to you. We are upset. This is so unjust. What's happening? And this is horrible. What's happening to my mother? Where is God?" So I said, I don't know. I have the same question. And this woman, I remember it was like 2:45 in the morning now. She turns to the nurse, the daughter, and she says, can we get a different rabbi in here? Is there a rabbi who knows the answer? That's what we wanted. You're supposed to give us the answer, Rabbi. I said, you know what? You're stuck with me right now because you're not going to get another rabbi right now. It's going to be at least a few hours. So she said, what? You don't know why? I said, no, I don't know why. In fact, I personally couldn't pray to a God who I understood. I believe that God is much, much deeper, much more complicated. In fact, I'll tell you a story about that patient's room as I conclude. But my rabbis, my teachers always told me that our challenge in life is not to ask why. Just because we can't get an answer. There's no satisfying answer. What we ask is what? Meaning, what do I do in the face of such challenging questions? Because the reality is, if I knew an answer, if I could get an answer, if a rabbi would tell me, here's why bad things happen, it would let me off the hook for fighting it. It would say, okay, I don't have to do anything about it because there's this or that reason. There must be, if I can give an explanation, then I don't have to do anything. I don't need a Sharsheret that's fighting for cures and helping people with support and emotional support and and physical support. I don't, what do I need to do that for? If there's a reason and God wants this to happen, then just let it happen. But if we say, no, I don't understand the reason, but I believe that God put us here to make a difference, and God put us here to help and do something, then the answer to that question is not why, but is what. So what am I going to do? And so there's some things that we do for, spiritual resilience. Judaism has always taught that spirituality has to be embodied. Spirituality is, of course, yes, it's feelings, it's prayers, it's lots of nice things, but it's also actions. It's doing things. It could be singing, it could be reflecting, it could be writing things down, but it's so much of it, spirituality is expressed in actions. And there's an incredible idea, which is that the Torah, when it talks about charity, about tzedakah, it uses the word venatnu. Venatnu is a Hebrew phrase that is actually interesting because the word is spelt the same way, forwards and backwards, the same letters. To give, it means to give. To give is the exact same, spelled backwards means to receive. Giving and receiving is the same thing. When we give, we receive. I mean, I know it's very famous, but there is something to be said for like the fact that we are what we give, not what we own, what we have. Life isn't about accumulating things; it's about giving to other people and making a difference in that way. I always love Viktor Frankl's quote. To me, if there's one person that I look to for during, illness and recovery, it's Viktor Frankl, who really, he was the one who taught, and this was what, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who was a hostage, his mother found out after he was killed that he was teaching the other hostages, anyone who has a why can survive anyhow. In life, we have to try to find a why. If we have a why, any kind of reason, not a why bad things happen, not why God does things, that's beyond us. But why am I here? What is my personal mission statement? What are my goals? What is my why? Everyone has to develop a why. Like what do I believe I'm here for? Anyone who has a why can endure as difficult as it gives them a context. And one of Viktor Frankl's great quotes that I frequently refer to is he would say that the door to happiness opens outwards, meaning we talk about, like in America, the pursuit of happiness. And of course, we believe in the pursuit of happiness. But he would say happiness, Viktor Frankl would say, happiness isn't pursued, it ensues. It ensues from living a life that makes us feel good about the decisions that we make and the things that we do in this world. And one of those is, giving. I always love also C.S. Lewis had a great quote that humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And I always thought that was, very meaningful and profound. But I have to admit, I am reluctant to go any further with that idea. Because as important as it is, as we think about the high holidays and resilience, one of the things that I have found with cancer patients in my work in the hospital, especially with Jewish cancer patients, and especially with women, one of the struggles that I have found is that I find that oftentimes people don't give themselves permission to care for themselves. They feel that they have to care for everybody else. And I have to put myself on the back burner. And my main obligation is to care for everyone else, downplay my own suffering, my own needs to make sure that my family, my loved ones are cared for. And I think it's very important and crucial to give people also permission to care for themselves and to what we would call otherwise being selfish, although it's not being selfish. The Torah says, "V'nishmartem me'od lenafshotechem." You should guard your soul very much. It's the only mitzvah in the Torah that we have the phrase me'od. You have to do it very much. Care for yourself very much. We have to be aggressively caring for ourselves and prioritizing ourselves. One way to do that, I'm speaking as a rabbi here, speaking in terms of traditional classic Jewish spiritual teachings. One way is the verse in Psalms says, Dage belevish yashchena. If a person has suffering, pain in their heart, Yashchena. Well, what does Yashchena mean? So the Talmud says, well, one explanation is Yashchena means crush it. Just crush it. Don't let it get to you. But the Talmud then concludes with its conclusive meaning. It says no, it means Yasichena. Talk about it. Talk it out. Actually sharing a person's fears, concerns, struggles is actually the most therapeutic reaction to fears, to concerns, to pain. If a person is suffering, share it with others. You know that there has been research that shows that PTSD causes the portion in our brain that manages speech to shut down. And so researchers realized that when a person is going through trauma, their speech centers in their brain stop functioning. And therefore, the trauma gets stuck in them. And therefore, the way to battle that trauma is to try to articulate what a person is feeling and what they're struggling with. That's why I love these stories of these rabbis who debated with God and weren't afraid to ask these questions, because there is power in asking the questions, even though I don't believe we have answers. There is a certain power in answering the question. And sometimes, as the Talmud says, Ein chovesh matir atzmo mibeit ha'asurim. Sometimes we cannot free ourselves from prison. That's what the quote means. Sometimes we need other people. We need to be able to rely on others and turn to them for help, and to recognize that we can't do it all ourselves. It's so important to have community, friends, professionals, organizations, people that we can turn to and open up to and share. I'm suffering. Just like Rabbi Levi Yitzchak said, God, we're mad at you. It's been a bad year. It's been a difficult year, and we're upset. And we want to share that. And and then he turned to his congregation afterwards and said, I feel better now. I told God how angry we are, and God understood that. And there's value in sharing that and saying it and being honest. I remember once being with the patient who's told me, she said, I don't know how to pray. Can you, I don't know how to do it. I want to pray, but I can't. I said, just talk to God. She said, if I talk to God, it's going to be pretty explicit. I have some pretty damning things to say. I said, so say them. She said, can you be here while I say it? I said, yeah. She started cursing and yelling. And afterwards she says, Rabbi, I'm so sorry. I was like, don't worry. First of all, I've heard those words before, and I've shared them with God as well. Like you don't have to feel bad. She said, it felt so good. It felt so good. I was like, you have permission to do that. If you need a rabbi's permission, you have a rabbi's permission. But sometimes we don't feel there's anyone we can turn to. So I'll tell you a story. I'll conclude, and I'll tell you why this fits with high holidays, and maybe I'll conclude with one other story. There was a story that I once heard from Rabbi Weiner. He's a rabbi in Baltimore who's also a psychiatrist, and he told the story himself. It happened to him. It's just, to me, it's an amazing story. I think about it a lot because of the implications of the story. He's retired now, but he was a psychiatrist and a rabbi. And rabbis maybe don't like to admit it, but rabbis frequently face burnout. It can be a difficult profession, especially at this time of year. Be nice to your rabbis, but everyone is it's normal. So, anyways, this rabbi, he was experiencing burnout. He was having crisis of faith. As a rabbi, he's like, I'm the rabbi. How can I have a crisis of faith? How can I be experiencing burnout? I need to talk to somebody. He calls the Lubavitcher Rebbe, this great rabbi in Brooklyn at the time. He wants to get a meeting with this rabbi because he feels like, I need a bigger rabbi than myself. I need a more senior rabbi to talk to. So he calls this rabbi's office, and the secretary answers. So his secretary says to the secretary, can I get a meeting with the Rebbe? So he says, he's very busy. You can't just get a meeting with him. So he says, well, please, any time of the day or night, I'll come to Brooklyn. I'll come have a meeting. So he says, okay, let me see if he's available. So he turns and he hears on the phone. He hears him say to the Rebbe. It was in Yiddish, but he understood Yiddish. He says he hears him say, Rabbi, someone wants to come meet with you. It's a rabbi who's experiencing burnout. He wants to come meet with you. So here's the Rebbe saying in the background, well, what city is he in? He hasn't said his name, by the way, yet. He has not said his name. So he says, what city are you in? He says, I'm in Baltimore. She says, Rebbe, he's in Baltimore. She says, tell him if he's in Baltimore, I don't know if I have time. Tell him in Baltimore there's a rabbi named Rabbi Tzvi Weinreb. He should go talk to him. So Rabbi Weinreb says he got chills. He says, what? Wait, what? That's me. He's telling him to go talk to me. So he says, Mr. Secretary, that's me. He just told me to go talk to myself. So he says, oh, wow. Okay, Rabbi, he hears him saying on the back phone, he is Tzvi Weinreb. That's who told him to go talk to him. That's him. So he hears the Rebbe say in the background, okay, in that case, tell him sometimes a person needs to talk to themselves. And he hangs up. And he thought, whoa, he was blown away. He said, what he was telling me was, I thought I can't handle this. I thought I was overwhelmed. I thought it was too much. And I realized he was telling me, you can do it. You have the strength. You have it within you. You think you need to go to a great rabbi and he's going to solve all your problems? And yes, as I told you, Jewish teachings say, share your problems with someone else. Go find someone. It's essential. But we also recognize our own inner strength, our own inner tools. I remember another story. I remember I got a call once in the hospital. The patient had a new diagnosis and he wants to speak to a rabbi. So I went in and met with him. Our job as rabbis, hopefully it's clear by now from what I'm talking, at least my job as rabbi, I don't have all the answers. A lot of questions, not answers. And sometimes people will say, my job is to listen to him. My job is to help him articulate. That's what we need when we're struggling, is to just have someone who cares and is compassionate, is a good listener, to help us share all of our emotions and what's on our mind and what's on our hearts. So he has this new diagnosis, and I'm just asking him, tell me more, tell me what you're feeling now. And at one point he says to me, I've met my match. I've overcome struggles in the past in my life, but this one's too big for me. So I remember I said to him, what do you mean you've overcome struggles in the past? What struggles have you overcome? He said, well, I'm 30 years sober. I struggled with addiction and I've been sober for 30 years. I said, how did you do that? He said, well, it's every day struggle. I go to meetings every day, I practice the 12 steps. I have a sponsor and I work it. And every day it's a new challenge. I said, wow, you have incredible resilience. Do you think any of those tools that you clearly have developed, can you use any of them now? And he thought for a minute and he said, you know what? I am strong. Yeah. I mean, all of that, sobriety is not easy. I've done that. Maybe I can, maybe I do have the tools. And, I stuck with him for a few weeks while I was in the hospital. And I remember how, he got a lot of bad news and he also got a lot of good news. There were good days. And it was incredible to see his resilience, the way he overcame, the way he fought, the way he was there for his family. And one of the things that we did, and with this I'll begin to conclude, although I'm happy to discuss more, was as part of his resilience, as part of his ability to cope, was a high holiday, a Yomim Noraim, a high holiday theme. And that is, the high holidays is a time, we say vidui, it's a personal confession, which is not just admitting sins. It's taking an accounting of what have I done with the opportunities given to me? Where am I? What am I accomplishing? Recognizing that I have the ability to change and that I have, I have the ability to think, what do I want to be in the coming year? I know what I was this past year, and what do I want to accomplish? How do I see myself? And what do I want my own, legacy to be? Who is the person that I'm trying to, who do I believe I am and who do I want to become? And, he started, I remember, listing his own values and listing why they are his values and creating a statement of purpose for himself. This is the things that we do on the high holidays, is to think, who am I? What do I want to be in the coming year? And focusing on, how am I going to get to where I want to be? What needs to be done in the world? What are my own talents? And that's really what the high holidays, this time of year is all about, to reflect on where I've been, where I want to be, where I see myself. A lot of the prayers, they can be seen as, judgment, or they can be seen as, what are my goals for the coming year? What do I want to accomplish? Where do I see myself? What's my own mission statement? And the challenge of the high holidays is to articulate that mission, articulate where we want to be. And it's a gift. It's a gift that Judaism gives us of once a year to really take stock and try to think to ourselves, where are our strengths? What are my strengths? And to recognize that everyone has strengths. Everyone has incredible resilience and ways in which we can strengthen and feed our resilience, and that can be done through sharing our struggles, sharing our anger, sharing our fears, having someone to talk to, having someone to articulate our struggles, whether that's a friend, family member, or professional, and also by focusing on ourselves and recognizing that it's not selfish to take care of ourselves and to spend time, give time to ourselves, to recognize what ways we find our strength the most emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and then have a plan. How am I going to nurture myself in the coming year? Emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. What do I want to accomplish in the coming year? What are my goals and values and my personal mission statement for the coming year? And to try to utilize the high holiday period as this time for reflection and building a sense of purpose. That man, was an inspiration to me. The way he recognized the struggle, but also found inner strength. And we can all do that. And I just want to give everyone a blessing to recognize that there's a lot of struggles. There's a lot of struggles in the world broadly and personally, and and I want to give you all a blessing that, as challenging as it can be, and we recognize the challenge, we do not sugarcoat it or overlook it, but that you should all be able to find, maybe all be able to find a sense of purpose, a sense of a sense of what we want to be in the coming year, recognizing the different struggles that we all have, but that you should have the strength and the fortitude to be able to um, cope and dream big. As many things can be taken away from us. Hopefully, our ability to dream and have a sense of vision and purpose, uh, can be nurtured. And may God bless us all with strength, with community, with health, and with a year that, we say Shana Tova Mituka. It should be a year that's sweet, that anything that comes our way can be handled with sweetness, with grace, and may God be with all of us, and may it be in a way that we can appreciate God's kindness and God's presence, and may we be able to have a relationship with God in a way that, even if it's a challenging relationship, that it's a connection, a relationship that hopefully, God says, Imo Anochi Batsara, I'm with you in trying times, and if we have that relationship, it can be comforting and strengthening. And I wish us all much strength and comfort in the coming year.
Wow. Thank you so much for these your really meaningful thoughts. I know that they're going to make the Chagim a bit easier for me, and I hope for each of you too. Well, at this point, we usually do an activity or ask a specific question and have you post in the chat box. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Rabbi Weiner has graciously agreed to answer a few questions, and we did receive some as part of the registration process, but I want to encourage you now to post any issues you might be struggling with surrounding this time of the year, questions you might be asking yourself about this time of the year in the chat box. We're only going to have time for one or two questions, but what we hope is that seeing that other people are also struggling with certain things will help us realize we're not alone in our thoughts and our challenges, and that will give us strength. And I promised Rabbi I would do a disclaimer. Each of these questions one could write volumes on. They are deep and insightful and meaningful questions, and so we have time for just a thought or two about each one. And if you find yourself really struggling, please remember that you can always reach out to someone at Sharsheret or a local rabbi or chaplain to continue the conversation. So someone asked for suggestions in balancing this time of year, family expectations, religious principles or obligations, and personal health, and that they are feeling so much guilt around all of the amalgamation of all of this. You are muted right now.
Yeah, it's a great question, important question. I'll tell you the approach that I take for this, which is that it's the Torah says that a person's supposed to give 10% of their income to charity if they can. But it also has a limit. They're not supposed to give more than 20% of their income to charity. And that's because the rabbis say if they do that, then they'll themselves become needy. So the later rabbis said that this is not only applying to financial means, this applies to a person's emotional well-being as well. We are expected to give of ourselves a little bit. That's, a part of being in community, we give. But there's also a limit to how much we're expected to give. And the rabbis limited that at 20%. Now, I know it's not everything can be quantified that way. It's not always easy to figure that out. But the point is, sometimes people say, like, I'm giving so much of myself. This is 50% of myself. This is 100. I'm giving everything. And it's important to recognize that, as I said before, we have to first guard ourselves, guard our own health. And there is a limit to how much we're allowed to give. And therefore, we have to recognize that. It's important to recognize that we shouldn't feel guilty about limiting the amount we give, and recognize that the Torah says you can only give so much. You have to also have some selfishness and recognize I need to take care of myself, especially during difficult times.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to try and combine two questions here. One you partially answered, and then the second half of it gets a little more specific. So somebody mentioned this fear, almost paralyzing fear of praying and repenting to be written into the book of life while negotiating rage and difficulty trusting God. And you talk about how there are no answers, and as long as we're in a conversation, that's a good place to be. And somebody took that concept a little bit further and specifically drilled down on Unatana Tokef, the part of the liturgy that talks about who shall live and who shall die. And the question here, is something I've heard from other women at this time of year. How can I possibly say that prayer without that part of the liturgy, without losing it, without becoming overwrought emotionally, and without being triggered? And yet, how can I not say that prayer this year when I've said it every other year, but this is the year I truly am begging for my life? And how to balance that and still have that prayer be meaningful or replace it with something else. I'm going to just stop talking and let you go from here.
Yeah, it's a good question, an important question. I'll tell you something. First of all, if you remember, during COVID, when the rabbis were saying to abbreviate the prayers because we didn't want to be exposed for too long, and the rabbis would give lists of parts of the prayers that can be removed. Unatana Tokef was actually one of them, and that's because it's a more contemporary prayer. It does not go back to the ancient times of the prayers. So that's number one. Is that I hope it doesn't sound too heretical, but it is allowed to skip that prayer. A person does not have to feel I must say Unatana Tokef. Yes, it became famous because liturgy made it famous, because it became such haunting melodies, and it became, it was recorded, and so people think it's so important, but it can be skipped. If it's hard for someone, that kind of fits into the 20%. You do not have to give more than 20%. If that prayer is too hard, you still fulfill your obligation to pray if you don't say that prayer.
I know that.
That said, some people can read, I've read contemporary renditions of Unatana Tokef that see it as not God judging me, but sort of like me deciding for myself what kind of a year do I want to create for myself, not in terms of this is my court case, but like this is my challenge for my own personal mission statement for the year ahead. So you can try to read it out of context that way. But the main thing that I find is if you look at the context of the prayers, meaning you don't see just one prayer in isolation, but you look at all of them, look at all of the Psalms, look at all the prayers. One thing becomes clear. The thing that becomes clear is that the vast majority of our prayers emphasize the fact that God is a loving God, that God loves us, and that there's compassion, and God is with us when we are suffering. And so if there's one sense of ideology, so to speak, what is God and what kind of a God are we praying to? We're praying to a God who loves us and cares about us and is with us in difficult times. And so even if an Etana Tokef doesn't emphasize that, it has to be seen in the broader context. And either it can be skipped or just recognize this is one perspective that one Paitan, one poet had that was meaningful for them, but it is not the totality of Jewish theology as it relates to these issues.
Thank you for that. I want to, first of all, I wish we could spend the next hour with you, but that's unfortunately not possible. But I want to thank everybody here for sharing their concerns in such an open and giving way. I'm sure it wasn't easy. And thank you, Dr. Rabbi Weiner, for your compassion and your guidance. It has really made a difference. Okay. I am going to bring Cantor Asher back. There we go. And want to welcome you back to the screen. And you're going to be singing a song. The meaning of the lyrics is so apt for today. I'm going to share the lyrics on my screen right now. Oops. There we go.
Adonai tzuri v'goali, Adonai tzuri v'goali. My God, my rock, and my redeemer, Adonai tzuri v'goali. My heart opens to you, my lips pray to you. Please, please, shine through. My God, my rock, and my redeemer,
Thank you. I want to say that your voice and the emotion with which you sing puts me in exactly the spiritual state of mind I want to be in this time of year. We are so grateful. Okay, it is time for us to come to a conclusion, and I want to start by giving my sincerest thanks to Rabbi Dr. Jason Weiner and to Cantor Jenny Asher. Together, you made this program something we can take with us into Yom Kippur and the entire holiday season. Thank you to the other members of the Sharsheret virtual Tashlich team, Rachel Teischer, Chani Kolan, and Shuli Kupchan. We have a brief evaluation survey. It's being posted, the link to it is being posted in the chat box right now. You can click it and still listen to the final moments of this program. And I want to remind you that Sharsheret is here for you in many ways. As promised, I want to share a quick note about our annual Sharsheret Summit for Breast Cancer and Ovarian Cancer Awareness Months. We have some truly amazing national webinars scheduled and hundreds of local programs across the country. The Sharsheret Summit actually has its own website. Yes, it's that big of a deal. So let's post that link in our chat box right now. And on this site, you can check out all the programs, both national and local, register for webinars, and learn more about our summit partners and sponsors. Among the fantastic opportunities, we have a fascinating webinar scheduled for this Monday night entitled Before Their Time: Understanding the Rise of Cancer Among Younger Women. I want to encourage you all to join us as this topic is so relevant today and to all. You can register through the Sharsheret website or through the Summit website. And of course, a reminder that our wonderful dedicated team of social workers and genetic counselors are there to help you address your concerns. Whether it's specifically about the holidays or something completely unrelated to the Chagim, please don't hesitate to reach out. They are full of great information, resources, and wonderful listening ears. Our contact information is in the chat box now. Thank you all for joining us today. Wishing you a Shana Tova, a new year filled with peace, with health, and with happiness. Shabbat Shalom.